Hey, well, it's that time again. Time to go over the numbers since it's Ruby's second birthday. We picked her up on June 14th, 2017. So this is the second complete year. So I thought I'd add up the numbers and put them in a little spreadsheet here and we could talk about them real quick. I also included last year's numbers just for reference. The maintenance in the second year was only $1,318 compared to last year of $2,785. The big difference was the 12,000 mile checkup last year was over $1,000. The 24-month checkup, or I should say the 50,000 mile checkup, it basically they put windshield wipers on Ruby. And that was it. It's like 24 bucks. The electricity cost is very similar to last year. It was $959 this year is what we paid in our normal monthly electric bill. When we charge Ruby, it's included in our normal household electric bill. This number right here comes from the little panel meter that I have that just measures the electricity that Ruby uses to charge. The insurance was $1,092, very similar to last year. Taxes and tags just close, very similar. So the difference is last year it was $5,610. This year it was only $4,348 total out of pocket. If you break it down in the cost per mile, we drove it this year 26,302 miles compared to 26,855 last year. So, Marianne, she's a little less consistent. So the difference is last year is 21 cents per mile, and this year it's 17. And if you look at just the electricity rate is actually up slightly. Our flat rate last year was just under 7 cents. This year it's just under 8 cents. So last year it was 3.1 cents per mile for the electricity. This year is 3.6 cents per mile for the electricity. Now, had we had a gasoline powered car and that gasoline car got 25 miles to the gallon, and if gas cost $2.60, which is a little low for today, we would have spent $2,735 in gasoline to drive that 26,302 miles. That works out to 10.4 cents per mile just for the gasoline to put in the car. And so we saved by having an electric car versus buying gasoline, we saved $1,756.41 last year. As I had said before, the current odometer reading this morning was 53,157 miles. Last year it was 26,855. The difference is 26,302 miles. And as I said, the little energy meter up on the wall is reading 11,989 kilowatt hours. If you subtract off the 388 kilowatt hours that we use to charge Sapphire. So basically we're using 1,000 kilowatt hours per month to charge Ruby at home. And again, as I had said earlier, the off-peak rate, which is the only time we charge Ruby, we do not charge her during the day, is just under 8 cents per kilowatt hour now.
And just one thing I'll add is that maintenance charge of $1,318, that was for a set of tires.
Yeah, most of that was tires.
Like,
that's right.
That was the tires, and then the $100 or slightly less that we paid at the 50K maintenance at the service center. And then the first year was the 25K service and a set of tires. So just explaining what that money was.
Yes. Tires is continuing to be the single largest expense for Ruby. So here's just a little breakout of calculating the gasoline savings, the savings that we had for using electricity versus gasoline. As I had earlier said, 26,302 miles is how far we drove it in the last year. Electricity rate's about 8 cents per kilowatt hour. Gasoline is 2.60. So we get about 2.86 miles per kilowatt hour. Now that sounds low, but you have to understand that 2.86 miles per kilowatt hour includes the time that Marianne is parked, sitting there running the air conditioning, playing Pokemon Go, doing videos and stuff. There's quite a bit of time that Ruby spends parked. She's not actually moving, and the air conditioning is running and things like that. So that's why it's only 2.86 miles per kilowatt hour. And as I said, we actually bought from the power company, from Duke, 11,989 kilowatt hours that was used to charge Ruby at home. And that's $959.12. Works out to 3.647 cents per mile. And as I said earlier, if you assume 260 per gallon, 25 miles per gallon, that means you need 1,052 gallons of gasoline to go the 26,302 miles, and that will work out to $2,735. And that works out to 10.4 cents per mile. So every mile that we drive Ruby, we save 6.753 cents per mile.
Using TeslaFi allows Don and I to get a lot of statistics about our driving habits and then to share them with you. And one of the things I enjoy looking at in particular is the lifetime driving map. Unfortunately, it won't let me just show you for the last year. So this is everywhere we've been for the last 2 years. And last year I said we haven't left the state, but remember the state is really big where you can drive hundreds of miles in multiple directions because we're sort of in the middle of the state without leaving the state. And that was true for this year too. But we came pretty close to being in Virginia when we were up at Roanoke Rapids area several times, both to go to the solar farm and to go to the NC Car track day event with Out of Spec Motoring. So we were really close to Virginia this year. We also did the Blue Ridge Parkway Drive last October with lots of other Teslas. So you'll see there on the upper leftmost part of the map, it's sort of faded area that was our mountain trip. Now, the areas where we've gone over and over and over again, they become more dark on this map over time. And the areas where we've just been once or twice or are faded, and something in the middle is, well, a line somewhere shaded in the middle. So we did not go back to Charlotte. That was a sort of a one-time thing where we made that big loop down to Charlotte and back around. But we did go out toward Greenville several times. So that's a very dark line out on US Highway 264 to go to Farmville for the glass station, glass blowing demos. And we were back and forth to Scotland Neck. I can see the trip past Rocky Mount to the Sylvan Heights Waterfowl Park. And we were over to Smithfield this week, so there's a line for that. And of course, the lines in and around the Raleigh-Durham area got a lot thicker.
Yeah, one of the very handy things that TeslaFi will do for you is answer the question about how your range varies with outdoor temperature. So it basically keeps track of the temperature every time you drive the car. And then based on how far you drive the car, it tallies that up. So this is a graph and also the chart for any drive over 1 mile. And it's broken into 5-degree Fahrenheit temperature increments. And as you can see, the efficiency is as low as 75% in very cold temperatures, up 15 degrees Fahrenheit to 20 degrees Fahrenheit. And the efficiency is also falls off a little bit once you get above 90 degrees. As you can see, it's 78, almost 79% in the 90 to 95 range. But in the normal ranges, which is anything from above 40 degrees to 90 degrees. The efficiency varies from 82% to right up to 97, 98, 99%. And also, if you look at the chart, it might be a little hard to read. It tells you how many miles each were driven in each of these temperature ranges. And as you can see, the bulk of our mileage was driven in the above 35 degrees Fahrenheit and and below 95. So that's the bulk of our temperatures. We only drove a few hundred miles when the temperature was less than 35 degrees, maybe 1,000 miles less than 35 degrees, and just a few hundred miles when it was above uh, 95 degrees. But this Teslafy will help you figure out how much range loss you actually get due to cold temperatures.
Our top 10 destinations chart hasn't changed a lot from the first year to the second year. And Don will be glad to know that I always end up at home, no matter how long I stay out, loving my ride in the Tesla. But of course, back and forth to school is the primary driving that I do. Over to Taekwondo, the mom routine, Guardian Angel Fuquay. And then I noticed there's 2 Walmarts on there. And that's because when they started the remodeling of the store, that parking lot is so big I had to start parking in a different spot. So the 2 Walmart entries there are actually both for the Fuquay Walmart. Whole Foods, of course, because I'm there at least once a week. Guardian Angel Apex ranks probably right up there with Whole Foods. Most times I go to Whole Foods, I go to Guardian Angel Apex. South Park, where I'm playing Pokemon all the time, and really the library is probably because I'm downtown playing Pokemon too. But certainly we do go back and forth for books as well.
This is the battery degradation chart that Teslafy helps you with to try to understand what your actual battery degradation is. And what it does is calculates based on when you charge up, any charges over 80% or above. It calculates if you were to charge to 100%, what the likely 100% rated range would be. And there's the graph's a little hard to read, but basically, the blue line are the actual charges, and the dotted line is some type of integration, some type of averaging of those numbers. But right now, Teslafy estimates after 24 months and over 53,000 miles that we still have 293.6 miles of rated capacity in the battery. We started at 296, just a little under 297. So we've only lost, after 50,000 miles, about 1%, which is like we can't even tell. We cannot even notice it. So we're quite happy with the battery or the lack of battery degradation. And I am very confident that the battery is going to last many hundreds of thousands of miles. The 8 years is not going to be a problem. I'd like to point out on the chart, since we don't charge to 100% often, but we do charge to 100% frequently. And the last time we were at just between 48 and 50,000 miles. We charged up to 100%. And we actually got 294 miles of rated range on that day. That was when we were doing like that supercharger test.
6 of our 10 longest drives did occur during the last year or our second year of ownership. Number 6 on the list here was from our house to the North Carolina Transportation Museum on last June. Don and I went down there to see the fire truck parade. So that's a pretty good hike. Also, from our house to Airport Road in Roanoke Rapids. Airport Road is up there where the solar farm is. And on that day, we did not stop at the Rocky Mount Supercharger on the way. We surely must have stopped on the way home, so that made that ride pretty long. The next one down on the list is Michelle's house in Willow Spring to Sylvan Heights Waterfowl Park in Scotland Neck, North Carolina. That is slightly north and east of the Rocky Mount Supercharger. So on the way home that day, we charged again, going directly to our destination and choosing to charge on the way back because we could. Next on the list is Roanoke Rapids back to the house. This is a different day when we were at the solar farm. We were up there for both a Tesla event and then also for an event where they had school children on site, and they wanted Ruby to come up and dance for them. Second to the bottom there, Poultry Drive to the Tesla Supercharger of Burlington. That was on our way back from the Blue Ridge Parkway Drive trip. The Poultry Drive is a rest area on I-40. And at the bottom there was a glass station in Farmville, North Carolina, back to the house. We tried to leave most of the times we went there as close to 100 as we could. And back in March on that day, the temperatures were fairly moderate. And, we were able to come back home or actually go to their, started at the glass station and came home without having to charge.
So this chart pretty much answers the question, where do you charge? We charge at home. We charged 347 times at home last year. You have to understand that we don't splash and dash at home. We plug in when we're done that driving for the day, and we unplug in the morning. We don't plug in during the day between trips. So that 347 days represents the fact that there were a few nights, mostly on weekends, where we chose not to charge. But all the other nights, 347 of them, we charged, and it was at some percentage to 80% in most cases. That's our normal charging rate. And as you can see, it's 11,869 kilowatt hours is what was used. That's what the power company or our meter would have shown. And that added 10,823,000 kilowatt hours to the battery. But what's really interesting here, besides the cost, that's $944 for the at-home charging, is that our average charging session. So when people ask you, well, how long does it take to charge? Well, at home, for 25,603 miles we drove or something like that last year, it averages 4 hours and 53 minutes each night to charge up Ruby. And the other two was the track day, and when we went to the Jaguar, we plugged in there. But if you look at the relative kilowatt hours, they're insignificant. 31 kilowatt hours and almost 14 kilowatt hours compared to 11,869. It's just trivial. So we charge at home, and it's costing us approximately $944 a year to drive over 25,000 miles, which is dirt cheap.
We just don't supercharge that often with Ruby. Lifetime, we're at 32 supercharges, 19 of which occurred during the last year. We at 6 different locations. We added 3 new locations this year, which were Wallace, Hickory, and Greensboro. And we did not go back to Fayetteville, Wilmington, or Charlotte. So we just have not spent a lot of time, only 9 hours and 36 minutes total supercharging in the last year.
Yeah, and the other thing to keep in mind, the total amount of kilowatt hours added by the supercharger was 610 kilowatt hours. That's just over half a month's energy use, or approximately 5% of what we typically use to charge with at home. So the supercharger is not a significant percentage of our charging activity in kilowatt hours. Now, of course, it's free. which is a positive thing since we have free supercharging. But it's just we supercharge when we need to. We charge at home.
One last interesting number to take a look at. During the time that we've had TeslaFi activated, which is not entirely the time we had Ruby, about the first month or so of driving, we lost. It shows that we drove 50,724 miles and that there were 5,196 drives. I did the math, and our average drive is 9.8 miles. Last but not least, our software updates. Last year, we had 16 software updates, and TeslaFi said that we got one an average of every 20 days. Although I would like to point out that you'll see one of them, it took 58 days for it to roll around. And let me tell you, we were checking like every morning, every afternoon. Do we have one yet? Do we have one yet? Do we have one yet? I think that's right before Nav on Autopilot came out. So, yeah, definitely worth the wait. The previous year, we had 19 software updates. So overall, a few less last year, but I would say certainly equivalent in the amount of new function and enhancements that were done.
You know, one thing that Mary and I've decided that anybody who gets a Tesla, the day you get your Tesla, you should sign up for TeslaFi. It's $50 a year, and we find it invaluable. It will draw you a map every day of all your trips. It documents how long you charged, how long you parked, how many charges. As you see, it has all the data you probably could ever want. It's easy to use, keeps track of software updates. I highly recommend it. If you get a Tesla, go on. If you like the numbers and you like knowing what's going on, go on and spend the $50. If you use our referral code, I think you get a 14-day trial instead of a 7-day trial. It's well worth it. Please try it.
And sign up right away, because you lose the data for the time leading up to when you sign up.
That's right.
Told you guys last night that Don washed Ruby, and he's out here finishing detailing her this morning because...
Happy birthday, Ruby.
That's right. It's 2 years since she was delivered. That's right. Yep. I'm sure her actual birthday is a little few days before, but to us, today is her second birthday.
Part of the family today, 2 years ago.
That's right. Don's so motivated to get out there and finish up Ruby that he hasn't even had his coffee yet. Johnny's giving nighttime some attention. She seems to be enjoying it, and the sun. Don and I are going to take a little ride in Ruby. He's got her all clean. You know, we can't let her sit all day on her on her family birthday here.
We're gonna go somewhere special.
We are headed to the Duke Homestead. Don's been once before, but probably over 10 years ago. I've never been. It's a pretty straight shot north to Durham area. And Johnny's at the house. He wanted to stay home today. He's on the computer playing games with one of his friends.
Yeah, well, Ruby has perfect weather for her birthday. There's no humidity, and it's 75 degrees and not a cloud in the skies. Perfect Carolina blue sky.
Yep.
So today's the day to get out
and do something.
Do something, because let me tell you, in the summer, including June, usually we have these kind of days in May, but they're rare in June, and they just get, you know, you really appreciate them when they happen. They're so rare that when they happen, you really appreciate it.
As per usual here on the Turnpike, we are listening to Talking Tesla, and seeing what Ruby does on Navigate on Autopilot.
She's going to take this exit. Yeah, I still think she should turn the blinker on just a little sooner than she does. And now she's going to swing to the left up here. Of course, I don't know what this BMW is going to do.
Go slow and stay out of your way.
She is slowing down.
Yeah, she's doing 65 and into the curve here. The recommended speed is 55. She slowed down to 60. I guess she doesn't feel like taking it at 55 today. By the way, 60 seems to be
she's
fine.
Taking it at 59.
Well, like you said, Donnie, there's not a cloud in the sky. I actually, for photography and videography, prefer there to be some cotton ball clouds up there, but it is beautiful clear for sure. You know, I'm always pointing out construction in downtown Raleigh, but this side of Durham is really busy too. Over here by the Durham Bulls Athletic Park. They keep on adding in parking decks and businesses and I guess townhome apartment type structures. It's really expanding over here too. Here's the ballpark. So as I walk away here, I'm going to attempt to get her honking. Mirror should fold. I said the mirror should, there she went. Hopefully with me talking you could hear. It's much more subtle than the van. Right. When you double click the fob, the lock button, that is the real loud get out of my way honk. That's just more like a beep. And no fake lock sounds inside the car to say that she's locking or unlocking. We're here at Duke Homestead. Very peaceful. Just off to the side of the city. So we watched the 17-minute movie and it really centered on tobacco. We'll tell you a little more about it outside or in the museum. Tobacco plant seeds are super, super tiny.
Yeah, the red ones are actually coated seeds.
Sure.
The brown ones, they're smaller than ground pepper.
So these are the buildings we'll be seeing on the tour when we go outside here in a few minutes. Apparently there are other types of tobacco besides bright leaf, and since I've never heard of them, that was a little bit of a surprise to me. Well, I have to say that the history of tobacco is more prominent at this museum than I expected, and that also they've done at least as good a job, if not better, than they had done at the Tobacco Museum that Don and I visited last fall. So the movie told us that Washington Duke went off in the Civil War. It was a prisoner of war.
Captured, right? Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and that at the end of the war he walked home 134 miles and came home to only a wagon full of tobacco and 2 blind mules.
Right.
And basically went on from there to build the American Tobacco Company empire in Durham, along with his son, nicknamed Buck Duke.
Yeah, apparently during the time they were doing, Joseph Johnson was surrendering to Sherman here in Durham at the Bennett House, which is just like half a mile from here. It's not very far. The troops were standing around all the time. You know, they didn't do anything, and I guess Duke hit on the idea that he could turn that tobacco into some quick cash, and he realized that it's probably it's a lot of work growing tobacco. He had grew it before the war, and he knew how much work it was, and it's way easier to sell it. And so he got into the manufacturing of tobacco products and the selling and distribution, and versus going out there in that hot sun and growing this stuff, because it's like they say, it's a 13-month crop.
Yeah, well, they went on to say in the movie too that tobacco was a big part of the making of the United States, at least here in the Southeast, bigger than you think it was, as an importance of a crop. And some of the first automation, you've heard about the cotton gin. There's also a fancy machine for rolling cigarettes that was fairly instrumental. It said it took 20 very skilled women that would roll tobacco cigarettes. Could be replaced by one of these machines.
Well, actually it was 60, I think. But the thing was, it was they could do a good tobacco roller could do 2,000 cigarettes a day. the machine could do 120,000 cigarettes a day. So, and they kind of skipped over it, but back when they were hand rolled, the ladies used to have to lick them. And so when they first came out with cigarettes made by machine, they were the quote sanitary cigarettes. They were actually called sanitary cigarettes because nobody licked the paper to make the cigarette.
I'll see if I can't find a picture of that machine here in the museum. I'm sure there is one.
Wow, I haven't seen one of these since like 1972 in Trenton.
Well, what you really ain't seen is a pack of cigarettes for 40 cents.
Well,
I think
that's
they're like,
true too.
What?
10 or $15, I guess. I don't know. We've never bought any, but yeah. Don and I both agree we've not seen before a machine for dispensing individual cigarettes.
Yeah, and of course you got your, guess candy coated
Bubble gum, I guess, for your
penny.
kid.
So
Yep.
penny for a gum, 15 cents for cigarettes.
So near the Durham Bull Stadium that I pointed out on the way over here, you can always see the Lucky Strike water tower. And here, what's been named modern times Brightleaf Square was the big tobacco factory. And I did not realize that Duke University Chapel and such was, these buildings were built in like 1922 or started construction, so they were built to look like they were super old, even though they're not, historically speaking, that old. All right, there's one of the earlier machines, but they actually have a couple of the pieces of machinery here in the museum. That's really impressive.
And fish on the weekend.
Bond sack feeder, SCM maker. Huh. I have not seen machinery like this before, but I have to say it reminds me of the textile machinery I've seen at some of the other museums, you know, the ones where for a very long distance there are just women and children working at machines making cotton fabric. So Don and I are basically getting our own personal tour here this afternoon out in the property. It just worked out that way. There's no school groups right now or other people that have stopped in this afternoon. Our timing was perfect today for the movie and the tour. Obviously a tobacco curing barn.
It is.
I've been in North Carolina long enough to mostly recognize them.
Yeah, so what the Dukes were doing before the Civil War, like I said, they would be growing staple crops, and then they were growing the cash crop of tobacco.
Right.
And so you plant the tobacco in January in a small field, and you'll
Right.
cover it with burlap to prevent the frost from killing it. Then you plant it into your main fields, and then in around August or September, you'll take it out of your main fields. And you'll know, and you'll kind of have to do it in waves because not all the weeds are going to be ready at the same time.
Right.
So you'll pull off the bottom ones because they'll be ready first. They'll be a nice yellow color. And most tobacco is brown, but brightleaf tobacco, is, you know, as by the name, is brighter and it's a nice yellow color. And it mostly just grows from Virginia down through South Carolina. It grows in a couple other pockets, but it grows kind of the best here just because of soil composition and weather and things like that. So then once you pull it off, you would bundle up about 5 or 6 leaves and then tie each bundle on sticks like this, and there'd be, you know, endless amounts of bundles. And then you would stack the sticks throughout the barn, and you would feed big logs into a fireplace on the side, hence the term flue curing, because the flue, aka the chimney, and the heat would travel through those metal pipes. There'd be a couple pipes going through the barn. You would then shut the door and essentially cook it for about a week. And
Oh, only a week.
about a week, yeah, between 6 to 9 days, depending on, you know, how.
Sure, I just had this concept of months-long curing, but no.
You would, so because you're going to do it in waves, you're going to be curing for a couple of weeks.
Time, yeah.
But you know, you should be done by definitely October. You know, again, it depends how much exactly you're doing. But if you have a bigger crop yield, you're likely going to have a bigger or more.
So this tobacco barn was moved here from a nearby property. The original one is not on the property here. And I guess we're going to the blacksmithing area now, possibly. It's really nice out here. Like Don said, it's a perfect day for taking a walk. I totally understand Johnny wanting to hang out with his friends today, but this is the kind of equipment he would have enjoyed seeing, so definitely let me take a few pictures.
take your sticks with the bundles on them, you hang them on racks in here, and you keep it in here for about 4 days. Again, it depends, and it will rehydrate it just enough that you can then touch it and maneuver and things like that. So then you take your bundles, you unbundle them, you take your leaves, you put them right here. You have 2 people on either side of the bench, and you have 3 grades, 1, 2, and 3. Very creative, also known as excellent, good, and okay. And yeah, so your excellent, is pretty much what it sounds like. It's going to be the biggest, brightest yellow leaves. Good is going to be maybe a little bit small, but still very vibrant, or vice versa. And then your okay is going to be the smaller, browner, maybe some insect damage, things like that. And you could hypothetically sell all of it, but it depends on, obviously you're going to get the better price for this. It depends how flooded the market is that year, what the harvest was like. And sometimes what they would do is they would take the poor leaves and they would put them into the middle of all the good leaves, so that it would cause the trays to weigh more, and so people would think they're buying more of this quality because they couldn't see the poor quality. And
that's right.
So then what you would do is you would take that and you would put it on trays like that and sell it at market. And so all 3 of those steps is what Washington was doing before the Civil War. And when the Civil War breaks out, it doesn't really affect him a whole lot. And so North Carolina secedes in 1861, and then by 1863 is when it starts to affect them, because the Confederacy is more desperate for men, and so they raise and lower both ends of their draft spectrum. And so Brody, so Brody and Washington are now eligible. Brody is 17 at the time, and he only weighs 90 pounds, around. And we don't really know why. There's no record of him being very sickly, but he was just very slight. So because of his smaller frame, they make him a prison guard at Salisbury Prison Camp. And I don't know how much you guys know about the Civil War battlefield conditions. Prison camps were not much better than the battlefield, and so even for the guards, there was still malaria, typhoid, there was waste everywhere, and people were constantly getting sick and dying.
There was no good way to do it. That's right.
And so they suspect, and it is just a theory, because we can't prove this, but based on patterns of people who do get diagnosed with post-traumatic stress syndrome, they suspect that he might have had that. If today he would have been diagnosed with that. He did struggle with an alcohol addiction later in life, and several other trials, and they think that it might have stemmed from that.
Mental health wasn't so good after he came back from the war. Now this is Washington's brother.
His son.
Son.
His second oldest, now oldest because the oldest has passed away.
Okay.
Washington, on the other hand, is sent into the Confederate Navy, and he's from a landlocked farm, so he probably can't swim very well. But they just need bodies, literally. And so when the Union moves against Richmond, Washington and his unit are sent up to Richmond, and in the ensuing chaos, he is captured. But a week later, the Confederacy, because Richmond has fallen, the Confederacy surrenders to the Union, and Washington's rounded up with other North Carolinians and dropped off at New Bern, which is 133 miles away. And so he was actually kind of lucky. Some people from the further, deep southern states would just be dropped off in either North Carolina or South Carolina and shoved off the boat.
Right.
So it is quite far, but it's also not quite as far as, say, he lived in southern Florida.
Okay.
So he gets back, and he doesn't really have a whole lot left. His homestead is still standing. It is intact.
Right. Didn't get burnt.
But Bennett Place is nearby, and that was the largest surrender of troops in the Civil War, and so there was a very high troop concentration here, so there was a fair bit of plundering and looting and things like that. And so he also had sold off most of his farm animals and farm equipment before the war to help his family get a little bit of extra money before he went off. And so he gets back and really only has this little bundle of tobacco leaf, and it's at that point that instead of farming it, he's decided to go into manufacturing it instead. And we'll talk about that in the next.
So this was the pack house. Had nothing to do with horses or blacksmithing. It was the pack house. So I do believe the little white house in front of us is the homestead building. You got to remember, this is Civil War time, not some of the mansions the Duke family lived in later on in their life.
And he is doing quite well for himself. The fact that he's able to build not one but two. It is 2 stories.
And this is original to the property, this building?
Everything this side of the fence is
okay.
Original. Boards might have been replaced, or there's preservation in place. But
so this is one of the factories he built for making the cigarettes.
And we'll head on inside.
Oh wow.
And so you would love to kind of bear with us. We typically have a stack of tobacco leaves. Harvest is in August, and so
Sure.
we'll go through our stuff.
Wrong time of year for that.
But you would have your leaves here. You would beat it with sassafras, and they did think that, you know, people kind of more modernly thought that it added flavor. The real reason they used it was because it was free and it grew in the woods, and it bends. So when you beat the leaf, yeah, it's not going to break. And so what your goal is to separate the leaf from the stem, and the stem can actually, at the more local level, can go back to the farmer to be used as fertilizer, because it sucks out, or tobacco sucks a lot of nitrogen out of the soil. Well, all that nitrogen then goes into the stem. And so then you take your leaf, put it into your sieve, run it around, and you have different types of sieves, you know, for different grate types.
That's pretty thin, fine, I mean.
And then what you would end up with is pipe tobacco, and that
pipe tobacco.
You can touch it, smell it, don't eat it. People ask, they're like, "Can I chew this?" I'm like, "No."
No.
Plus, like, so many people have touched it.
Yeah, like really, no, just don't, just say no.
But yeah, so that is what they'd be selling. Their company was called W. Duke & Sons, and it was very much a family business originally. By this time, they would have been hiring lots of different people. There would be two rows of tables like this, and there would be between 20 and 40
Now, I
people.
presume the house was not always white.
To my knowledge, it was.
Really? Okay.
We do have pictures of it, and so this would be white. So I would do so. The main difference of the front of the house is that this yard would have been completely dirt. You would have a dirt ring around your house to prevent critters, herbs, and vegetables and things like that. Those would have been 20 times that size, but we can't maintain that. So we use that more for just kind of demonstration of what they would have been growing and things like that.
So the cook would have needed some basil or something and would have walked out to the herb garden, grabbed some, and...
We're currently growing parsley, oregano, rosemary. So then, over here you see the well house. The well is 40 feet and hand dug. And if you notice, it's raised up a little bit. So in the adjacent room you would have a little pool of water, I don't know, like a vase or something like that. And that's where you could temporarily store jam and butter and things like that.
Oh, right. The water is cool when it comes out.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And then the cold air from the ground would also be able to rise and go through that that little wall because of oxygen.
This is the smokehouse.
And we use the green wood because it sends off more smoke than regular wood, and then it can hang in there for up to 3 years.
Heat, yeah, not so hot, and you don't really, you don't want to cook.
Yeah, yes, you don't want it cooked, you just want it to smoke. And so it can hang for up to 3 years, and you know, that's just
Yellow-bellied sapsucker's been busy on this tree too.
slowly work on that.
Wow, we get to go inside. I'm impressed.
Well, hey, we get the deluxe tour.
Only the best. This is the VIP treatment, of course. There is a bit of a lift here, so you watch the side.
It's pretty decent sized. I mean,
It is a pretty good size. You know, people are either surprised at how small it is or how big it is. Most people either think, oh, well,
But it was just bang when it was built.
yeah. So originally that dining room, we'll get to that, was not there originally.
okay.
But yeah, so you do have to remember they are middle class.
That's right.
So they're not like dirt floors,
That's right.
straw huts.
Sure.
But they're also by no means like plantation owners. So yeah, so a couple key features. This is original to the family. This is the exact chest that they would have owned. The rest of the furniture is contemporary. I'll get out your racing picture.
Yeah.
The rest of the furniture is contemporary, and so there's one more original piece which I'll point out in the kitchen.
Wow. So what did they call this piece? It's the chest.
And you'll notice there's only one closet in the whole house. Typically they would just use chests and armoires.
Right.
Bed is made of corn husks. Straw is also a very common
Yeah.
stuffing material, and it is a rope bed. So you don't have like a box.
Oh, I see. Yeah, the rope. Some of the glass panes are original, obviously. Over time, some have broken, but
Yeah.
yeah.
Cut nails up there, sweetie.
Oh yeah, I do see that nail up there above. All the rooms, of course, have a fireplace so you can stay warm in the winter.
So the house originally ended right here. The upstairs did exist, but it was, this dining room was
Look at the little tiny stairs.
Mm-hmm. We have some little kids who are like, "Can I climb it?" But I've actually never been up there, but it's mostly just storage. The downstairs is pretty much the same, just two rooms.
2 rooms.
One for the boys, one for the girls. There's a 3/4 wall.
But did somebody live up there for when the house was, I mean, is that why there's an upstairs? Is it was more bedrooms or?
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, yeah, that's the thing. So, because they did have 5 children.
Yeah.
And because they were middle class, they could afford to build,
Is this the only stairs to the upstairs?
Yes.
Okay.
And this is the activity room.
Yeah, so this is the parlor. This is kind of where you would receive company, and before the dining room, it's where you would spend any family time.
Yeah.
And you'll notice there's window treatments, there's artwork, there's even couch cushions and ceramics, and those are things that would have been added later once the Dukes could afford to purchase. But because, just the fact that they're able to build it, once again, does show that they're doing quite well for themselves. And now, because the kitchen is connected to your main house, that all that excess heat from the kitchen can now go into your house. So to avoid that, for the summer, they installed 2 doors on either side to get a cross breeze going through.
Makes sense. Absolutely. Well, normally that door goes.
If you'll notice, there's little holes poked in it, and it's essentially your old-fashioned pantry. It's where you put bread and pies and whatnot. And the holes are poked outwards so that any bugs trying to get in would actually get their wings clipped, but the heat could still escape.
Huh. It's pretty fascinating.
The stove here would have been a later addition. It was the old family home. But yeah, so you are going to make your own candles, either from tallow, which is cow fat, or melted beeswax. And you would stick a wick in it and then just kind of let it harden. And you'll notice there's a couple kind of spaces between the slats, and that is not deterioration. It was actually designed that way so that in the winter and the colder months you can actually shut the door, shut the windows, and the heat can still escape.
Right.
Because it's the kitchen.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Is there anything you guys want me to address? Those are kind of like my favorite features.
Oh, I'm good. I mean, yeah.
So why the gun over the door? It's just handy if you have to run out and use it?
Well, so it's more for just kind of hunting. That's kind of where you put it. Sorry, really long process. If they wouldn't really use it for defense, it would just be kind of like that's where it's stored. That way it's not like in reach of people, and it's not like you're actually going to grab it.
Sure, accidentally,
It's just in the story up above us?
Yes.
There's no more, there's nothing else up there?
Yeah, no.
Just the attic?
Only the main house has the double layers.
So it's strictly because of the span?
She was, definitely well educated, especially at the time when most girls, especially on a homestead, were not, because there was no point to it when they're just going to grow up, have kids, and work in a kitchen.
That's right.
But he was very much a personal effort of his. And
well, that gets back to that Methodist thing.
So Washington Duke put up a lot of money to make sure women could be educated at the same places that men could be.
In the early 1900s,
That's a pretty important thing, especially for back when it was.
Trinity College was a little Methodist school. It was bankrupt in the middle of nowhere, and is now Duke University.
Okay.
And then he died the next year, and he donated another $65 million, and that money formed the basis of the Duke Endowment. And today, the Duke Endowment is worth billions of dollars, and it does continue to grow. It took a little bit of a hit in 2008 with the crash, but it's back up. It's booming, and a lot of that money goes to there's at least 5 different schools throughout the Carolinas, excluding Duke, that gets funding from that. Duke gets a large sum. The Methodist Conference gets a lot of money, and they divvy it up between the churches, orphanages, and schools. There's other churches throughout the Carolinas that get some. Duke University, Duke Hospital gets a lot of money, and a lot of that Duke Endowment money goes into medical research for cancer, lots of other things, as well as they're trying to reverse the legacy that tobacco has on people. Sure. They're trying to create programs for people recovering from tobacco addictions, and to find out if there's anything good that can be made from tobacco. I think they're actually having a little bit of success with that in using it to help grow other plants quicker or something like that in a lab. I'm not very science-minded, so you'd have to look that up for a little bit more information.
Well, I would have to say they've done a really good job, because not being from around here originally, I just associate Duke with Duke University.
Yeah.
So the fact that it was founded, the money originally came from tobacco, it makes total sense, but I never thought about it or realized it till today, I guess.
And so, this is pretty much the end of the tour. If you guys have any more questions, I'd be happy to answer them. But I do want you to kind of leave, with an image of a coin on one side. There is so much good that has come from that film, and, from the money. But you also have to remember that a lot of that money, all of that money, came from a pretty harmful industry.
Right.
Obviously textiles is less harmful. The wages weren't great, but wasn't.
Well, the working conditions weren't good, but yeah.
And so but a lot of that money came.
The things produced that left the textile mill didn't hurt people at least, yeah.
And so like the Dukes were by no means perfect. They also weren't necessarily terrible people.
Yeah.
They were exactly that people at the time. But their company, by the late mid to late 1900s, they did start to figure out that it's not harmless. And there were a lot of cover-ups, trying to prevent people from finding out how terrible tobacco was for you. And so, I won't kind of give you a conclusion, but in your own head, think of both sides of that coin, and think about how much each side needs to be weighed against the other.
So which Duke family member got into medicine? Like when did that?
I don't actually
Or-
believe they themselves did.
Okay.
I think it was more an offshoot of the university.
I would agree.
Okay.
I would agree.
Okay.
But yeah.
Well, it gets
This is factory number 1. The bigger building we went inside of was factory number 2. You know, at all of these historic places, I've seen some form of pottery displayed, but this is the first time the display has been spittoons and cuspidors. Don and I determined that a person born in 1968 does know the Marlboro Man jingle.
That's right. They
Just from watching TV and being exposed to it, but didn't exactly know what it was, but...
Yep.
Wow, I did not realize or think about the influence of the American Indian on early settlers learning to grow tobacco, or I didn't understand until now the way the tobacco companies stereotype and misused Indian images to try to sell their product. It's very sad. We were over in the Winston-Salem, Greensboro area, we would be having a different conversation about R.J. Reynolds. So the paper that gets wrapped around the cigarettes is pulled through that system there.
Right, this is the actual cigarette paper, this white.
Yep.
It comes up here and it's fed along here, and you can see it right here. The tobacco drops in there and it makes a long, continuous, infinite length cigarette, and then knives cut it into individual cigarettes.
I find it fairly ironic that the woman working on this side of the machine looks to be wearing a nurse's uniform.
This is the actual cigarette paper. It's, you know, feels just super thin.
Super thin
Big
paper.
rolls
This
up.
is a plug press. Apparently it's used to make plugs of chewing tobacco. Only at a place where they have tobacco history would you find the tobacco hornworm. It's pretty funny. Don says this is a Kia Soul EV, and I do see the little EV over there.
Yeah.
The badging. We're back home and all the kitties are here. It must be dinner time, Donnie.
Yeah, well, I don't think the boy fed them.
It's all right. Need a geo fence on that horn honking because we ain't liking it here at the house. It scared my cats. I'm going to have to turn it off. It wasn't helping me that much. I've already trained myself to look to make sure the mirrors fold. Don says he's got to go run today. He's all got on all of his Live Strong stuff, his yellow outfit. You're coordinated today for running. Wow. Yeah, he says the weather's too nice not to run.
Not to run. It's just too nice. You can't.
There's a beer waiting on you when you come back.
I'm planning on tapping that. Yes, ma'am.